You are listening to Brave Talk Radio. You're just in time to join today's Brave Conversations with your hosts, Jackie Little Guest, Deryl Williams, and Toni Emehel.
We are welcoming you all to another broadcast of Brave Talk Radio. I'm Latonja Worsham, sitting in for Toni Emehel, and I am blessed again to have my co-hosts and friends, Jackie Little Guest and Deryl Williams. Boy, oh boy, we left off with some interesting information, talking about unhealthy relationships, the dynamics of marriage, and then we got left off with the issue of being unequally yoked. Wow, where do we begin?
Well, first off, let's say hello to everybody again. We want to thank everyone that's been listening to the show, and thank you for your support and your positive feedback. If we're going to talk about being unequally yoked, we got to start with the scripture that says that you're not supposed to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. It also goes on to say what fellowship has light with darkness. And then there's another scripture, I believe, in the book of Amos that says two cannot walk together unless they agree. So what the scripture is speaking to is compatibility. And we've been talking about unhealthy relationships. Let's segue into what constitutes a healthy relationship. From my perspective, one of the absolute prerequisites for success in a relationship is being on the same page and having a commonness of purpose. And since this is religious, we're coming out of a religious context on this show, or this show has a religious forum as its basis. Spiritually, you want to be connected with someone who has a personal relationship with God. Typically, when you embark upon a relationship with someone who is not a spiritual person, or a person who does not have a relationship with God, has not accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, I would think there would be somewhat of a conflict. However, I do know that a lot of people, some people, let's say it that way, are willing to take a chance on being in a relationship with someone who is not spiritual, who is not religious, who does not avow a relationship with God or Jesus Christ, and because they feel their choices are limited. And then in that case, we have to use another scripture that says, wait, I say, on the Lord. You have to wait. You have to be patient and not be willing to get into or nexus with someone or connect with someone that's not right for you, just because you feel your choices are limited. That's what I would start off by saying.
And I agree with that. And when you said that, how can two walk together unless they agree, even in the secular world, how can you I may have the mindset of an entrepreneur where you don't have that mindset. You don't want anything to do with that. But I am bent on, I want to own my own business. I want to do this. I want to do that. But the other person, that's not their interest. Okay? We need to rethink this thing because there is going to be a problem. If we're thinking of marriage, if we're thinking of even just being engaged, there is going to be a problem because we don't agree. We are not walking together in agreement. Exactly. So, we got to think about this thing. And also, a lot of times, it makes you wonder, is your self-esteem so low that you are dating someone and he is beating the mess out of you, but you want to marry him anyway? Is it really that good? You see that she or he is cheating on you. Every time you turn around, he's cheating on you. Every time you turn around, she's cheating on you. But yet you are willing to walk down that aisle and say, I do. What are you saying? I do accept what you are doing. I do accept for you to degrade me. I do accept all of this. And do you really think that's a marriage that God has said I'm in agreement with? That is not the kind of God that I serve. So we, before we become engaged and we need to sit down and think, okay, let me sit back and think about this. What is going on in this relationship right now? Because if it's going on right now, it's not going to change. So I have a choice to make. Either I'm going to accept it from now until one of us die, or one of us say, I can't do this no more, or I am not going to accept this, and it's time for us to part our ways now before we get too deep into this thing. Because if he's cheating on you now, what makes you think he's not going to continue doing it? And that goes for male and female. What makes you think that person is going to change? Because what you're saying is, I know you're doing this, and I accept it.
I just wanted to make a comment there because I thought it was really important. I love how you mentioned what makes a successful marriage, Deryl. And, not to mention what you mentioned, Jackie, in reference to how do you know? I mean, all these different things going on that people are checking along the way. But you know what, traditionally speaking, through the church sector, if you will, oftentimes people are put in situations such as a young lady that has been what they call married out of wedlock, if you will. Oftentimes tradition says, well, you need to marry this girl. But God did not tell them to marry her. And see, it's funny because we'll say, well, God brought us together, let no man put us asunder. But God did not ordain that. So right. Here we are. We have couples out there living, and I must say, living a life of hell off of somebody else's interpretation versus what God has audibly said for us not to do. And a lot of us are doing things off of something within the church sector. Yes, I'm going to say churches that are encouraging young people to do things just because tradition says, and tradition, mind you, is killing us.
Which brings the question, even a bigger issue, and that is, what does a person do when they've been married to someone and it is an abusive relationship? There is incessant adultery on the part of one partner. I would say it's not God's will for you to stay in a relationship that you should have perhaps never been in the first place.
Exactly.
Tradition also says, when I was coming up, that once you married someone, you had to stay married to them. I recall very vividly when I was growing up in the church community I grew up in, that was the expectation. I saw, and I'm going to say this on there, I saw preachers physically abusing their wives on church grounds. I mean, slapping the living devil out of them. And the leaders of the church just stood around and said, well, that has nothing to do with us. And the expectation was for that husband and that wife to stay together after this man brutally beat this woman right in front of the whole church congregation. I've seen all kind of stuff like that. I would say, and I'm going to tell my daughter, the first time he puts his hands on you, the first time he calls you out of your name, if you discover or it's disclosed to you that there's a incessant, continuous, chronic adultery going on, or some type of substance abuse, or some type of any type of malicious maltreatment, that is, in my opinion, that is God telling you, okay, this is not a situation you need to be in, and in her case, call your daddy and have him come get you, and be done with that. I don't think it's God's will for anybody to be in any type of abusive, unhappy, unhealthy relationship, whether it be a marriage or otherwise. And I do know that there are still today some religious communities that advocate that you're supposed to stay there, and and I believe you're supposed to go to counseling. I believe you're supposed to try to work through your issues and think. But if it's not working, and it's clear that it's not working, and it's clear that this person is not going to change, and it's clear that this person is abusive, it's clear that this person has a drug problem that they're not going to do anything about, it's clear that this person is jumping from bed to bed, and me or whoever in the relationship runs the risk now of being infected with a killer STD, no, that person has to go. I need to get myself together. I need to, stabilize my life, and hopefully down the road, there may be somebody else that's more appropriate, that's suitable, that's, is someone that I have a commonness of purpose with, and can be in unity and live in harmony with.
Live in harmony. And that leads me back to what I was saying before, is that, it's all about the choices, but it's the other people that are allowing people to make the choices for us. I mean, think back, Deryl. I know you're single. You've heard the statement, and I remember years ago I used to make statements like, how should we date? Can I date this person? Can I go out with this person? You asking leaders, can you do that? And they're supposed to lead you properly, but what is the Spirit of the Lord saying? Especially if you know the Lord.
Exactly.
When you know that behind closed doors, you don't like the fact that, she doesn't comb her hair, or not even behind closed doors, when it's just you two together out on a date, how you mentioned the interview piece. I kind of like that, because to me, that's really significant, because these days, I know Jackie says sometimes you don't know, but when you mention adultery and things of that nature, well, that's because people are in relationships they had no business being in, because they knew they were unequally yoked, but they followed the man of God. It's kind of like how my pastor said once. He said, I'm in love with the woman in my head and not the one in my bed. Hello.
Exactly.
Yes. That's a problem.
Exactly.
That's a problem. That's a problem that the church doesn't want to talk about today. While you look around and you see all these smiling faces that look fake, that's because they're really not happy, because God didn't ordain it.
Right. Exactly.
And then they want to run that guilt trip on you, because you're in a marriage or relationship. Well, let's say marriage, that it's not helping you. You're not moving on. You're just living with each other. You're roommates, and you're not happy at all. But you got to play the part. And a lot of people are just playing the part, because this is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, they say it's supposed to be better to marry than to burn, huh? Mm-hmm. That's what religion says.
Yeah.
Ooh, Lord have mercy.
Burning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they went on and made a decision based upon that and that alone. I think a lot of people don't realize that God actually created sex to be sex. Yeah, we're talking about it on BraveTalk Radio. That sex is created to be something that's enjoyable, a peace cloak of heaven that God gives a man and a woman. So if you see a lot of folk running around having adultery, affairs, and things of that nature, that's because they chose the wrong one, because they're not experiencing heaven that God had intended for them to have, but because they chose to do something outside of the realm of God that He did not ordain, that's why they have the problems and the issues that they do. Don't be fooled here. What it looks like is not what it always is.
Let's stay right there for 1 minute, too. And that's a big issue in the black community. And that is a lot of attention and a lot of weight is given to the sexuality of the relationship, even in the church. There are people that base their opinion of a happy union or relationship on how good the sex is. And when you're married to someone who is adulterous, there's this thing called SoulTies. And we don't talk about this, but I think I heard Dr. Stevens talk about this once, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Every time you lay down with someone randomly, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about adultery, you leave a piece of yourself, your soul, with that person in that process, and that person becomes tied to you emotionally and spiritually through that union. So much so that people that are addicted to this kind of thing and place a high priority on sexuality will stay in a horrible marital or relationship scenario because of just the sexual aspect of things. And that sometimes leads people to stay in a relationship and put up with the abuse and put up with the adultery and there are people, and this is becoming like a trend now, where people get married and they have what's called open marriages. They know the husband is out doing his thing. The husband knows the wife is out doing his thing. They have this agreement that that's okay. You have some marriages now where people are involved in this thing called swinging, where you have a whole bunch of couples that get together and it's like a big orgy. And this is going on, and people are doing it. And then you have some people, and we talked about this, and again, it speaks to what people perceive as the choices that they have. You have some women and men that are marrying and are comfortable being married to people that are gay, that they know are gay, and marrying a woman that he knows is a lesbian, and that kind of thing. Which all of this stuff in my mind is insanity. But from a sexual standpoint, when you're married to someone and they're having adultery, I spoke to the risk of contracting a deadly STD, but this guy or woman is creating soul ties with people outside of the marriage. And sometimes, and I think when Pastor Stevens did speak to this, he did a very good job of talking about how that is a demonic spirit that's hard to break. Yeah. So again, I'm going to go back and say, when you're in a situation like that, you have to know that you know that you know that you know who God is. And you have to understand that God does not want you to be in that situation if that situation is not going to change. And you have to come to a point where you realize, yes, I'm unequally yoked. This person, it was not the person for me. Maybe I married him, or was enthralled with his looks, his money, his business success, his financial wherewithal, that kind of thing. But at some point, you're going to have to come to a conclusion and make a decision to not allow yourself to be disrespected and maltreated and move on.
Exactly. And, that's funny you mentioned that, Deryl. When you talk about the soul ties, a lot of times people don't realize the soul ties often happen, especially if you lose your virginity or you give it away, if you will. What happens a lot of times with these soul ties, these people come into these relationships, like I said, not ordained by God, with all this other baggage, all these other soul ties that they've been connected to, all this additional baggage that they brought into a new relationship. So now you're talking about generational curses. You want to know why your kid's acting crazy? You want to know why you crazy? You want to know why you lonely? That's the problem. Because all of this additional baggage that you brought from these soul ties and the soul ties that you're dipping in even while you're married. Oh, we need to talk about it because that is the issues. We have all these seminars and conferences and all of that about marriages, but nobody really talks about the real talk as to why marriages can't stay together, because somebody will and somebody won't, yet they keep saying, I do.
Exactly. And we need to continue the conversation we had last week about the fact that not everybody's supposed to be married. You may not. There's some people that probably will never get married, and that's okay. It's not an anomaly or an aberration for someone to be single and happily single. And at least in that mental capacity, and if you have if you have a happy spirit, so to speak, and you're whole, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, if you finally meet someone who does qualify, who you are compatible with, both spiritually and otherwise, okay, now you can come together as two whole people, and not marry for the sake of just getting married because everybody thinks you should be married.
Well, like they say, love don't pay the bills.
Well, it's one thing to be married, but it's another thing to be happily married. Anybody can get married.
That's right.
But it's another thing to be in a situation that you're happy with, that you enjoy. I envision marriage being something that you enjoy. I envision marriage as being a thing where if I'm working all day and I'm seeing my woman all day, I can't wait to see her. We might argue and fight every now and then. She might get on my nerves. She might do something I don't like. That's par for the course. There's not going to be anything perfect about any situation. But in that person that I married, this is how I envision it. If I'm going to be married to someone, that's got to be my ride or die woman. We have to have a symbiotic relationship, and I have to know that this person has my back, and I have to know that this person is loyal to me, and I can trust them. I won't feel good going home every night to a woman like that. That's what I'm.
The key word you mentioned is trust. That's a big one. That's a big one right there.
Well, no, I was going to say with the trust factor. When that trust is broken, especially at the beginning of your marriage, that's your foundation right there. So if you you trying to build a house on a cracked foundation, what do you think is going to happen to that house? It's not going to last for so long. So if it is cracked from the beginning, you better do something to get that thing fixed because your house is going to fall.
Yeah.
You know, that's the reason why the Word of God says a house divided against itself cannot stand. But, you know, oftentimes when I mention those workshops and so forth, trust is not something being exercised. It's kind of like exercising a muscle. We don't exercise these muscles. I tell people all the time, marriages, dating, relationships, they require exercise. They require exercise in the muscle to the point where if you don't get continuing education, I firmly believe, even in a marriage, as long as I've been in, you need continuing education in your marriage. Because why? Because there's transitional stages that happen. There's transitional stages in dating. There's transitional stages in looking for a spouse. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot going on, I hate to tell you, but you want to get the right thing. Why? Because you're going to be spending a lifetime from death, what do they say, till death do us part. You better be sure of that thing.
Right, exactly. That's a good point, too, about continuing education. In as much as networking, conferences, marriage retreats, and those kinds of things, for me, I guess, and I emphasized this in a previous conversation that we had about this, was one of the best forms of continuing education is just surround yourself with people that possess the type of marital relationship that you desire to have or appear to, because appearances sometimes can be deceiving. But if I see or encounter couples that have been married 20, 30, 40 years, and they appear to be happy. They appear to be cooperative with each other. They you know, there's love, and some of these things you can't fake. I'm sorry. I've been in a serious relationship myself, so I kind of know how it feels and how it looks and that kind of thing. You want to surround yourself with people that are in the type of relationship, maritally speaking, that you want to have, and try to glean from them whatever information you can. And again, Jackie made a good point last week, and I think I stated that in response to her point that in sitting with people, their personality differs. And what works for that person may work for him because of his personality. But if the information can be acquired, and I can take it and personalize it and utilize it for me in a way that works for me when I finally embark upon a marriage, because that's what I want to have. I want to surround myself with people that are in successful unions so that I know, how to go about that process. That's a form of continuing education.
Well, that leads us back to when you talked about the ironing, sharpening iron. It's really important to hang around healthy relationships because, it's still a process. Like I said, I've been married 24 years. It's still work. Don't fool yourself. It's still work. Trust is always, something that you're always questioning in your mind. Why? Because you're always evolving. You're changing yourself as a human being. I'm getting older, so there's some different things you look back, and you reflect upon. You want to make sure that you can still be all that you want to be, live your dreams. Will they allow you to live your dreams? Everybody can't live their dreams and live in the house with their spouse. Things they did not talk about that they need to talk about. That's what I tell people all the time. Think about what you're thinking about, but you got to communicate it with your spouse, because when it comes down to having these conversations, hey, those conversations needed to take place well in advance. But on that note, let's take a break, and we'll be right back, and we'll pick up where we left off talking about, healthy versus unhealthy relationships. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com. Hi, this is Toni Emehel. Today I'd like to talk to you about the value of a good brand of coffee. You see, the thing about a good brand of coffee is that it's predictable. You can always count on it to taste the same as long as you follow the manufacturer's instructions. When I think about my favorite place to grab a cup of coffee, I think of things like stability, character, worth, reputation. In fact, I think about how dependable this little coffee spot has been, and that every time I go and I get my cup of coffee, it's always going to be hot, it's always going to be ready, it's always going to cost me the same amount, and I never have to worry about the cashiers overcharging me for what they've given me. It's a good quality brand. And not just the brand of the coffee, but the host of the coffee. It really reminds me of God. You know, I can always depend on God because He's never let me down. He's never failed me. In fact, His word says, I am the Lord and I do not change. Just like a good quality brand of coffee. I can always count on God to love me, and I can always count on God to put people in my life as an extension of the care that He has for me. What can people count on you for today? Can people consistently experience the flavor of your manufacturer when they enter your space? What kind of coffee are you? Are you living up to your manufacturer's name? This has been a Teachable Moment with Toni Emehel.
Today's broadcast has been brought to you by Next Level Plus Project Management and Business Consultants. Learn more about how Next Level Plus can help you solve the right problems and seize the right opportunities by calling 704-780-2997 or visit their website at nextlevelplus.org.
It's Brave Talk Radio on ToniEmehel.com with your host, Deryl Williams, Jackie Little Guess, and Toni Emehel.
And we're back, and we want to thank you for joining us again here with Brave Talk Radio. Here I have my friend Jackie Little Guess and Deryl Williams, and I tell you, we're talking about, living your dreams and making sure we know that we know that we know, right, Deryl?
Well, yeah, that's a very good point you made before we went to break about living your dream. You have to be on the same page. And when you meet that person is going to support you. Again, I said I know what it looks like. I actually had someone in my life that wasn't musical, but she supported everything that I did musically. She was at all the events. And it got so to the point where if I was out somewhere either ministering or performing and she wasn't there, I felt lost. That's a good feeling. She had my back. This person actually was studying psychology at the time, and she wanted her degree in psychology. And there were times when she wanted to go hang out with me, I would say no, because I knew she had a lot of homework she had to do, and I knew that there were things that she needed to get accomplished academically. So I would encourage her to do her homework. I'd be like, look, we can hang out later. I want you to get that degree. And it was never a me and her kind of thing. It was us. Me supporting her getting the degree, or her getting the degree was not just her getting the degree, it was us getting the degree, because, if she were to advance herself academically and financially, then that means we have advanced. And that's the thing too. Thank you. When I just said thank you, I'm thanking my own internal spirit. When you get into a serious relationship, you replace the I and me with us and we. If it's not us and we, then as far as living your dreams, accomplishing your goals, and various achievements that you want to have, that's not likely to happen if you're in an I and me kind of relationship with someone. And again, some people will stay in those kind of relationships because they feel that they don't have any other choices, and they're not willing to be patient and wait. Hey, I've been single now going on 5 years. I am very picky now. When I go out on these interviews, I see the one thing that I don't like, and I'm done. Because there's just certain things that I'm not going to experience again in my life. And when I meet a person and all those harbingers are there, I shut it down. And I'm okay with that. The right one day, will offer me what I need to be successful, and I'm going to offer her what she needs to be successful. And then we can cause that scripture in the Bible to become manifest when it says two join together and become one. Her goals become my goals. Her dreams become my dreams. And whatever she wants to accomplish, we're going to work together to help her accomplish whatever it is she needs to accomplish. My goals and the things that I'm trying to do musically and otherwise, that person is going to help me accomplish those things. Otherwise, I don't need it. I don't need to be in a relationship. I don't need to be married. If we can't be on the same page, if we can't, if we don't have the same values, and we're not going to support each other. You got to be in a situation where you're going to get support and the encouragement that you need from your significant other.
And, I hate to backtrack, but you made a very good point, Deryl, because you've been married before, and, you've seen some things, and you know what you liked, you know what you didn't like. And, I really want us to always provide hope for people in marriages and also to provide them insight here on Brave Talk Radio. And I tell you, we also have to help those who say, okay, now where do I go from here? Or am I in a marriage? Think about this now. Am I in a marriage that I should not be in or I should not have gotten into? How do I find my way out? Hello, because, when you think about that, people say, well, God says that divorce is wrong. What's your take on that, Deryl?
I didn't hear him say it.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be clear because, a lot of people think that they've got to stay in these relationships. And I got to tell you, that's not true. That's a lie from the pit of hell.
Well, we must put this out there. Now, we are not telling you to go walk out on your husband or your wife tomorrow. So don't.
We are not.
Yeah, thank you. Because let's move on.
Thank you, Jack.
But what we are saying is, when you have done all that you can do. When you have exhausted every recourse to work through a situation and make that marriage work, and the other person is not willing, the other person is going to continue to be who they are, whether it's an adulterer, whether it's someone who physically abuses people, or maybe he's a pedophile. We don't know. When you have done all that you can do, it's time to walk away. I'm sorry. I'm not one of these people that was born and raised on this God don't like divorce stuff. God don't want me to be unhappy the rest of my life. And see, if you stay in a situation that is the wrong situation, 30, 40 years, and I've seen this. I've seen people, head deacons in churches, been married 40 years. I go over to the house, the husband sleeping upstairs, downstairs in the basement, and the wife sleeping up in the upstairs room. I've actually seen this, and the only reason why they stayed together was because of the house. Neither one of them wanted to give up the house. They hated each other, couldn't stand each other, miserable, and stayed together just because of the house. No, I don't think, me personally, you can't tell me that's God's will for my life. I'm sorry, I ain't going to stay there. You can have the house. You can have the car. I'll go get me another house. I'll go get me another car, because at least if I'm in another place and in another space and on another frequency, now I can be happy. And if I get myself together, the right one, if it's for me to be married, number one, the right one is out there. If one person's trash is another person's treasure, baby. And that's my perspective on it.
And you know what? That goes back to that being what we started off with. We're taught, because mom and daddy stay together. Like you said, daddy sleeping in the basement, mama sleeps upstairs. This is what the children have seen. This is what they grew up with. So when they get married, 9 times out of 10, well, mom and dad stay together. And we're going to do the same thing. And the cycle begins over and over again. And you're right back where you started from, that toxic relationship. Because that's what I grew up. This is what I know. This is what I've seen. It worked for them, so it's got to work for me. You don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to get anybody's feelings hurt. I don't want to do this. But you are killing yourself.
We're killing. Yeah.
Because you know you're miserable. You know you are. You know you're hurting. But I gotta stay because this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I saw mom and daddy do, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. But you're living in a toxic waste.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Wow, a toxic waste. You couldn't have said that better. Goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not only killing yourself, killing your spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Killing your spirit, living in a home with continual verbal and physical abuse, killing your spirit, just allowing yourself to, on purpose, be unhappy. What a waste of life. I don't believe God, when he said, I came to give you life more abundantly, I mean, is that abundant living? That's something to think about. And like you said, Jackie, no, we're not trying to encourage divorce, but we need you to think about the fact that, you know, is this God, was that God ordained?
Well, let me recapitulate now. I said, if you know that you have done all in your power to do to make that situation work, and it's not working, and it doesn't look like it's going to work, and it don't look like it's going to work tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, it's time to walk. I'm sorry. And there's a way to do it. There's a process. We need to be very clear on this, too, because I had to go through this. There's a way to do that and remain at least amicable. And I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm divorced. One thing that I don't do around my daughter, and she's never heard me do this. I've never had one negative thing to say about her mother. That's her mother. She has to have a relationship. And this happens a lot in black families. The family will split up, and the mother's dogging the father's dogging the mother, the kids are all in the middle. They pick sides, because the whole family now is dysfunctional and divided because of a family breakup. Let me reiterate again. You have to make sure that you've done everything in your power to make that situation work. And people stay together because of the kids, but sometimes that's unhealthy. That leads to a dysfunctionality. They see mom and dad don't talk. They see mom over here doing her thing, sneaking out, and some of the kids, as they get a little older, they run into mom with a boyfriend. They know daddy got girlfriends, daddy hangs out at the bar. You know, all of this stuff is causative. All right? It's a very pejorative way. So, yeah, you have to make sure that you've done everything. And we're talking to people, you know, people of faith and people of God. You have to make sure that you have done everything that you can do possibly, everything within your power, to be honest and committed to reconciliation in that matter. But if it's not forthcoming, okay, I need to be, because it does not make sense. And Latonja, you made a good point. To stay in a marriage 30, 40, 50 years, and be miserable, and when the marriage is over, one spouse died, and you finally get divorced, now you're bitter. All your youth is gone. All that time you could have invested in someone, if you meet that someone that will truly love you, that will truly support your goals, that will truly help you become an accomplished person. Why waste all that time with somebody that you're not happy with that ain't going to do nothing for you? And let me say this last thing. You don't want to be in a stressful, depressing kind of relationship. Stress is the number one killer of African-American people. I'm not going to stay in something that's going to kill me. I'm sorry.
I want to say one thing. Even though the person, you know, they may be a good person, they're not abusive, they're a wonderful person, they're just not for you.
Exactly.
Good. Because that's the truth. That's the truth. They may not be for you.
Hey, they're kind, loving, and all of that. But this is not for you, honey. Everybody is not for everybody.
These marriages that we forced to happen, even ourselves. Yeah.
Yes.
That we insisted that it was love, but yet it was infatuation.
Yeah. And I have seen marriages put together. They put these people together. They got married, and the one couple that they fought against, they fought against those people get married. They went and they eloped. Nobody knew about it. And here it is almost 30 years later, they're still together. He's a bishop. She's first lady. They are moving up in God. But the ones that they put together, they didn't last 5 years. Make you wonder.
Yeah. They're busy trying to prove something to the people.
Yes.
I'm going to say this, too. I'm against that whole matchmaking thing. I think that a person should be emotionally mature enough to meet someone, approach that person, and interview that person in a way that's going to extrapolate or provide the information that they need to make an informed decision about whether or not they want to continue to build a relationship with that person. There's a lot of matchmaking stuff that goes on in African-American churches, and I've been through that. I don't approve of that, especially now at my age. And if I don't know by now, I'm never going to know, as Patty LaBelle used to say. So I've never been a proponent of this, let me introduce you to this person, and, someone encouraging me to pursue someone because that's who they think I should be with. That would never work with me.
That's good.
I need to be the one to make that choice. I need to be the one to sit across from that person and ask them those critical questions that are going to make her critically think about her answer. And her answers I'm going to analyze critically and determine whether or not, okay, do I call this person next week to go out, to dinner with them? Do I want to continue this process? And if the answers to the questions are not sufficient, and if the body language isn't right, and if the spirit, there's a spiritual connection, this chemical thing that happens. If that don't happen, and that right there, those right there are good indicators for me. I keep it moving. And I say this all the time. Me personally, I don't have a whole lot of time to waste with the games and all the stuff that goes with dating nowadays. Look, either we gonna come together, either we have something in common, if we want the same things, either we have some goals that we can both work on together. There's some things I can support you with, there's some things you can support me with. Either it's gonna be that or no. That's just the way that's what it is for me.
And I think that's wonderful. And on that note, everybody, it's time for us to close up shop. But we've truly had some brave talk today, haven't we?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, until next week, thanks for joining us, radio listeners, for Brave Talk Radio. And we're out.
You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.